Come my lady, come my lady, you're my butterfly, sugar baby. Come my lady, come my lady.
Hello there guys, it's Joey. So today we have a video all about self-empowerment, and it's been a little while since we had a mono video, but this is a requested video to talk about self-empowerment, and there are going to be some products at the end. The witching hour, which is the self-empowerment energy that originally came to me around Samhain, Halloween, but I decided to keep it up because I really do enjoy it. So at the tail end of this video we're going to have some products, but if you don't care about that, you just want to hear about the juice of the video. If you want to talk, well, you can talk at me. I can't hear you because I'm pre-recorded, but you can talk at me. It's sure, it's fine. I do it all the time. Talk at myself. Why not? Yeah, it's going to be one of those videos. And we're going to talk about self-empowerment and kind of like a spiritual based sense of self and things like that. And it's going to bleed a little bit into another video that I want to make. And this is because I put a Facebook post, sorry, up, and Jessie made a video about it. And that's about aesthetics and stylization and where the line is between like the authentic self and the stylized presentation of self. And I do want to make a video about it because there's been some weird response to elements of it where people think I feel like aesthetics aren't important or non-sacred or something, and I'm like, do you know me? Like when I put altars together and I'm discussing the importance and the sacredness of the aesthetic, I'm all about the aesthetic. I love some dark witch gothic aesthetics. They're gorgeous, and I think they can be super powerful, and that's not really what I was talking about. So we're going to make another video about that where we're like, no, this is what I meant. Like, no, I'm not saying that images aren't important, because they are. And anyway, that's the next, well, not the next video, because I've got a couple of videos that I really need to get out. But we're going to talk about like self-empowerment and in this video, and some things that have been going on with regards to sense of self. So I felt it was important to make a video around the energies of self-empowerment rather than just a product video. And the reason for this being is because kind of like the sense of self has been under attack in kind of like a cosmos way, in like a social cultural way for a while. We had like the eclipse and like the two Leo portals between the eclipse, and it was all shadow work central, and now we're in Mercury retrograde, and Mercury retrograde is actually screwing with all my technology like more than usual. I've been like, okay, I got you, I see you, Mercury. And it's all very introspective energies with regards to like, deal with this shadow, deal with that shadow, deal with another shadow, and then you're trying to grapple around energies and concepts that you feel are important, but you know your shadows are coming into them, and you're like, I don't want my shadow to overwhelm the message, because the message I feel has value, and I don't want it to become like a shadow mask rather than an important message. And that's something that I've been mulling over and like going back and forth over, and I had like blog posts that I wanted to do, and then I was like, is this too much that it's drawing on my own shadow experiences rather than really being a message that I feel needs to be out there in terms of like empowering myself, empowering other people. And that's an important part of what a lot of us do when we share messages to do with spirituality. It is hopefully primarily for most of us about empowerment of one kind or another, and because we're walking in witch circles, or however you want to define yourself within spiritual circles, there is a sense of spiritual empowerment through the written word, the spoken word, and however you want to say it. I talked in the blog post about storytelling and the storytelling archetype, storyteller, that we already acknowledge how important our own words are. You know, it's why they call it spelling, is the stereotypical meme that follows, but also that we control our own narratives, our own stories, and that's kind of like the weaving of magical energies into the story of who we are as individuals, as souls, as people, as humans, and however we choose to represent ourselves within the context of our own stories. And so then empowerment what story of empowerment follows this? And where does the story of spiritual empowerment, witchy empowerment, lie? And why do we need it? And kind of like, why is empowerment a thing? So why do we need it as spiritual practitioners? Shouldn't we all be secure within our own power? Don't we all know that as witches and as spiritual beings, don't we have an inkling, at least, that there is something other than and that we're tapped into it? And there's this interesting dichotomy of when we start with the spiritual path, that on the one hand, there's a desire for self-empowerment, and this can feed into the ego that we want to be special, we want to be unique, we want to be touching something. And it's why we all love the little quizzes that are like, oh, what is your superpower? Or which spiritual being were you in a past life? And we all love those little self quizzes. And that's a little bit about like, it's a little bit ego feeding, isn't it, really? And it's like, oh, I could have been this in a previous life. And we don't usually take those tests very seriously, but it's all about a sense of self that we kind of feed a little bit. And I don't see an overarching problem with a little bit of ego soothing like that, you know, as long as that's harmless. I think it's only when it becomes to the detriment of other people that then that sort of self-empowerment has fed on over into like ego poisoning, because I think we talk about ego too detrimentally to quite a lot of the time, because ego serves a purpose, ego has a role, and pride in oneself, one's abilities and one's gifts is not necessarily an inherently bad thing. And I've talked in the past about how we sort of demonize certain emotions when all emotional states are valid, all emotional states are necessary and human for the human experience of a spiritual lifetime. And I really don't believe in the suppression of emotions in order to become a spiritual being, become more of a spiritual being, to better understand the self, because that's a line within self-empowerment as well. Is there is this line of you don't have to experience the emotions, you don't have to react. And whilst there is a choice element involved in reacting to situations with regard to emotions, I think there is a time to react to certain things and a time not to. And that choice, although that's a little bit either or, because there are obviously degrees of reacting and not reacting between those 2 points, which is a much fluxier way of looking at it when you think about it. We can choose to react, we can choose not to openly react, but if we are internally reacting, then we're choosing not to react on the surface, but we are reacting underneath. And I don't know that we can ever not react at all within the self, because that's kind of like being devoid of emotions. And the only people who are devoid of emotions are like psychopaths, and do we really want to be that? Like, no, not really. So understanding the emotional response is something else. If something bothers us, bugs us, irritates us, really makes us angry, really makes us happy, whatever it is, it's looking into the energy of where that emotional state comes from. And understanding that emotional state can be really empowering to the self, like better understanding as within, so without. So as within, what emotions are empowering me and what are kind of like handing away my power. And power is often seen as a dirty word within itself, when within itself it's not. Power can be used for all types of good within society and helping others and sharing experiences. And power and taking one's power back isn't necessarily having power over another. It's really over the self. And that's what a lot of spirituality is meant to be about. It's not meant to be necessarily, witchcraft can be in some circumstances, but that's the art rather than the spiritual element, the practice, about mastery over the self rather than mastery over other people or domination. And there's this interesting line somewhere where it becomes beyond self-empowerment, becomes about domination, and I think that's more about when it's exerting the self on other people. And really when you're trying to exert the self on other people, it's because you are not empowered within yourself. Because if you're truly empowered within your own being, you don't need other people to feel dominated by you in order to justify that reaction. I just had dirty kinky thoughts go through my head, unless everybody's willing and it's, you know, all fun and games. That's my mind going, well, Exceptions to the rule, though. There are always exceptions to the rule. And there are no rules, so rules are nonsense. Okay, anyway, so really it's about what empowers you as an individual, and what is the core essence of empowerment. What are we talking about when we're talking about empowering the self? And that, like, the further I go along, like, empowerment of the self it's more about personal perspective. I think for a lot of us, self-empowerment is about feeling comfortable in our own skin, and given all of the shadow elements that have been like piling on top of us because of the spiritual energies right now, it really is about finding who am I, and am I okay with myself, and how do I be okay with myself when other people are confronting me with that I shouldn't be okay about who I am. And this is the sort of the twisted knot of emotional and mental and psychological energies that have kind of gotten to me lately, and why I started talking about aesthetics in terms of what is acceptable, what is the norm, what is even a stereotype for the presentation of spiritual beings. Excuse me. Apologies for the crazy light change. We're gonna hopefully have some proper lighting at some point soon. Okay, so that, to me, when an aesthetic, because it is really, really easy for a physical thing to be applied to how people should look or speak or think on the surface, because it's a much easier value judgment to make. And it's kind of been poking my shadow all over the place with this because of a number of different things, because of the judgment, and then the kind of like the pressure to conform thing that comes in. And that to me is disempowering. Like, the pressure to conform to anything other than who you truly are, sense of self, is really disempowering. And we're living in a world which is all about disempowerment, and a lot of like the social and cultural what's going on. Rather than coming together in a sense of unity, there is a lot of disunity, like us versus them mentality that has crept in, well, crept in with the same way a brick through a window creeps in, and has kept escalating. And there's been a lot of a spotlight on this kind of like conflict within the world, and there's been conflicts on the worst elements of humanity, the racist elements, the sexist elements, things that divide people rather than bring people together in a sense of unity. There's been this is like elevating certain members of society whilst looking away from others, and there's even been a spiritual slant on this when I've forgotten what it was talking about. It was talking about the privilege with regards to when you were ignoring the sacred burial grounds of people when they were going on about building pipes through the Native American burial lands, but they were fine. They weren't fine with like when it was something to do with white people's rights being attacked, but people who had ignored it. Now, I don't agree with like being either or, because we should be very much focusing on the fact that these elements within government are attacking the people, and it's only serving the rich elite. But that's kind of sidestepping. But there is kind of like a disempowerment thing that is being presented to us, force-fed to us through every element right now. And this is even true within spirituality, and there's been kind of like people are kind of getting worried about spiritual freedoms, about speaking spiritual truths, being true to being pagan, because of the energies in which we're living right now, where inclusion and unity are not promoting understanding right now. There is like this disunity, and I think I was going to make a video on it, but I kind of include it here. I feel like the reason a lot of people were quite bothered by the Dorothy virtue thing is because of them kind of like worrying that there would be then a pagan backlash. Now, there had been people who said, oh well, it doesn't matter whose spiritual path they follow, it doesn't affect you directly, who cares if she's Christian now, how does it affect you as an individual? And I don't really agree with that perspective, because whilst I understand there is kind of like a pagan Christian argument that goes on. I feel like the worry that for a lot of people is, well, if she starts this, she's quite well known and quite a big celebrity, and if she then starts shining a really horrid light on New Agers or pagans again, and we've seen this before. I'm a born again Christian and I reject your evil Wicca, and it's like, that's not what Wicca is about, or it's not what paganism is about. It's not about being evil, and it brings kind of a witch hunt is what people are worried will then come from that circumstance. And then there are people who've paid for the courses and paid a lot of money and invested a lot in, and they feel lied to, but that's something else. And that's kind of like talking about the disempowerment of spirituality as a whole. So what I was talking about with regards to like the stereotype and the kind of conformity and that being kind of disempowering is, I feel like there is like a pressure to be a certain way that disempowers the individualism within paganism, witchcraft, modern spiritual paths, if you like. And we as witches or pagans live in a highly individualized path. Our altars are so interesting from an aesthetic point of view because they are so different, they're so unique, they are meant to portray the individual relationship with deity and the self, and they're supposed to be an expression, an outward aesthetic of art that comes from the heart and soul. And so the thing that I feel is troubling to me about conforming to a particular aesthetic, a particular style, is it takes away from the importance of individual practice. And I am hugely against the idea that there is one way to practice, and this feeds into things that I've said about the real witch problem, where people are like, this is how real witches practice, and it feeds into the problem I have with people telling me this is how you must follow the Morrigan, you must do it this way, you must follow these people. And I'm like, well, if these people are acting in a way that I don't feel is morally ethical, then no, I'm not going to. And if I feel like my intelligence demands a different perspective just because I sit in a different energetic space than these people, then I'm not going to be pressured by bullying or anything else to conform to their standard way of thinking. I encourage the individual to embrace what it is about their spiritual practice that makes them them. Now, there is, of course, pitfalls within individual practice. You get people who then start arguing that their way is the right way and the other way is the highway because that's what worked for them, and therefore that is what works, full stop. And that's what works for you. It's not necessarily what works for someone else. It's very much like individual choices, individual talents. Some of us are better at certain things than others. Things can be learnt, but natural talent is one of those weird quirks of the individual, of the mind, and of genetics perhaps, but ultimately it's within that little spark of the self that can't be fully explained as to why somebody is a fantastic artist and they, you know, paint cathedrals ceilings and their work is known throughout time, and then some people are incredible musicians, and some people are incredible scientists, and so on and so forth. And it's just where different things lie. And of course we live in a culture of coveting of what other people can do and have, and then that becomes into a jump on conformity thing, like I must do this in order to be popular or spiritual or whatever. And that to me is problematic in terms of empowerment, because it disempowers the self. We get into all these arguments about what the right way is, and that's a really weird discussion that comes up all the time. Like, the conflicts are all based around the right way of doing something most of the time, and it's incredibly disempowering to the self. There are individuals who go out there and they're like, we have to lead by example, we have to just do us, we have to show that this is how we do something, we're going to talk about this is why we do something and why it means something to us, and hopefully that will click something in someone else, that even if they do not see the world the same way, even if they do not feel the world the same way, they will still understand that they can then perceive however they perceive spirituality, and then they can investigate it through their lens, and that's important. Now, I've also heard with regards to me saying this, oh, I just live and let live. And I'm like, okay, but if all the good men do nothing, then evil prevails, is on the other side of things. Like, we can't live and let live in a world which is seeking to disempower people and not speak out about the things that we think matter. Because having a voice is an important part of self-empowerment. Speaking our truth is a very important part of empowering who we are. And there's a difference between empowerment and validation, which is an important point to make. Validation I've made videos on before, and it's usually looking for approval, or I don't know, elements of approval, I suppose, gratification of some kind from outside of the self. It's not really about empowerment, it's about fitting in, it's about conformity again. And conformity is this nasty, sneaky, murky little hole that creeps up on us, because it feeds into the cult of not belonging, of really wanting to feel like we belong and we connect with other people. And humans, of course, are, for the most part, social creatures that like communicating and connecting with other human beings, having friends, having partners, whatever it might be. But when we conform to fit in, which, make no mistake about it, is not something that only happens at school. Like, there are people who are like, oh yes, it happens at school and you're all pressured. And I'm like, yeah, okay, except it happens throughout life. I've seen it in all walks of life, where you have to fit a certain way to be in with a certain crowd. And it's really quite disempowering to the self, because we have to kind of find people who resonate with who we truly are, rather than going out and trying to fit ourselves into square pegs into round holes kind of thing. And it's kind of what I was talking about and have spoken about a few times, about the idea of spiritually planting ourselves in concrete. And I've talked about this in a number of places, and this was kind of my thing, and with Chris, and I was like, stop planting yourself in concrete, and she was just like, what are you on about? So planting yourself in concrete is basically considering us all to be biological life form, very much like a tree or a plant. And if we're trying to plant ourselves in concrete, then we're constricting ourselves from growth. We're not allowing us roots to spread. We're trying to fit into this tiny little space, and we don't belong there, and we feel uncomfortable, and we don't nurture ourselves, we don't grow. And that is the kind of like a key of disempowerment, trying to fit ourselves where we know we don't want to be, and we know we don't belong, and we know it's not good for our spiritual growth. We know we're not going to learn anything, we're not going to push ourselves outside our comfort zones, we're not going to grow. And that, to me, is the essence of disempowerment. Instead, we need to figure out where the fresh, fertile soil is within that land, within our spiritual, emotional, mental landscapes, in order to plant ourselves into fertile soil, have conversations with people who make us think, even if they challenge us. And that is much more empowering to the self, because a little bit of questioning the self is probably the best thing for us. Like, realizing we don't know all the answers, of seeking knowledge and going out and learning some more is really what empowerment of the self is all about. And it's really about being secure in your own skin, in your own mind, within your own emotional states. And in terms of witchy empowerment, being secure within self means that people can't devalue you. Now, that's not going to be 100% true, because people can always find a way to make you feel bad about yourself. And again, a lot of it tends to be like surface stuff. You're not pretty enough, you're not this enough, you're not that enough. And, you know, it bothers us when people are trying to devalue who we are as people. It's sad. So really, it's a process of slow and meticulous and keep coming back labyrinth style self-empowerment, and kind of like layering it on like lotion, that we keep on empowering who we are as individuals without becoming keen to dominate other people, because that's about outside of the self rather than inside the self. Okay, that's 25 whole minutes of me rambling about self-empowerment, so I'm going to show some of the items. I will say that I have left the votives in the other room for the lady whose items they are, but the witchy oil and the votives and the anointing oil are already technically on the store. So that is the anointing oil, and this is a well-loved spell oil. The light is a little bit rubbish because we need proper lighting. There are proper photographs on the store of that, but I will show you the new products now. There are 2 spell cauldrons and 2 pillars per the lady's request. However, I'm only going to show you one for ease and simplicity. So this is the pillar. Oh, it smells so nice. And the witching hour is all about empowerment, but it's about drawing down the witching hour. And the witching hour is referred to as a particular time of night where all witches came out and they were empowered. And there is fluff in my hair. Oh, God's sake. There you go, Fluff. You go over there. And this is why I don't edit, because you would have missed that joyous moments. I think it's funnier to leave them in, but you know, each to their own. And so, you know, there you go. It's nice and black and it smells gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. What should we do next? Let's do the little salts. So I got some special jars in just for Halloween. They're going to be 2 other than this one. And these cute little spell jars with the, hopefully you can see all the shimmy, shimmy, shimmy of the witch salts for the witching hour. That's a lot of witches in that sentence. So there you go. Lots of shimmy. Lots of shimmy shim. So you can use salts into like Samhain rituals, and you can bring a sense of self into your Samhain rituals very easily with the witching hour. And I'm actually going to make everything apart from maybe the spell orb available for repurchase for people, because I love the witching hour energy and they are on the store anyway, although the salts, there will only be 2 extra of these, so if you want them, you got to be quick, because once those 2, excuse me, once those 2 are gone, they are gone. And yeah, so you can bring in a whole ritual at Samhain, because I want this to be the best Witches New Year ever. I want to be the best me. I want to be empowered. I want to bring everything in. I want to be great. I want to be sparkly. I want to be shimmy. I want that empowerment. And then, you know, you can use the witchy hour energy for that. You can find out more about that on the store right now if you're interested in the oil or the anointing oil or the votives, which I have completely left in the other room because, you know, Joey. So this is then the spell orb. Was a beautiful ribbon. It's a beautiful ribbon. And I got the special little, the little guy. Look, it's a little witch guy. Or girl. It's difficult to tell. He's got a little staff. He's walking. He's got his little hat. I love these dudes. They're so cool. And then, there you go. And then you can see all the inside. There we go. There's that. There will be close-up pictures because the lighting, I fight with the lighting in this place no end. So there are actually 2 of the excuse me, they are 2 of the spell cauldrons, but they're both very similar, so I just brought one through. They have like the white base, and then I played with the colour on these a little bit, so they're a little bit more of a cosmos within, rather than just the black and the glitter like you get with the pillar, so, and the votive. So it plays with a little bit more with the idea of like that time of the witch's night, that kind of energies of the cosmos, that divinity, that destiny. There is an energy, a lovely energy of destiny within the witch's hour that really brings out, this is who you're meant to be, so be that person, you know. It's an excitement, it's an adventure. We're gonna do it. Do it, Anakin. No. Anyway, so then we have, last but not least, for these items, and obviously there are multiples of some for the lady again, is the smudge. Do not eat it. Like, seriously though, oh my god. So there's just a little hydrangea on top for decorative purposes, because anybody who makes smudges knows that if you put too many of certain kind of petals in, they stink when you burn them, which is not good. Stop putting rose petals in loose incenses. It's not good. Just burn things. Burn things you make. You'll learn quickly. So the smudges are made from the nose up. They're using items which smell good. Smell good to the senses. Smell good, darlings. So the energetic matrices of the smudges are very much meant to build an energetic temple from the ground up, and it's all to do with scent. And this one is for the mysteries, the magic, the energies of the witch and the potential. There is a divination or prophecy elements to it. And the Witch's Hour temple is a very interesting, almost offshoot temple of witches. They're not the same center or anything, but the presence of what it means to be a witch is in both. So in Temple of Witches, it's very much about the archetype, the raw essence of what it means to be a witch. Within the smudge for the Witching Hour, it's very much about the presence of the witch and magic. It's almost like a Circe, Calypso, witches of old kind of energy. Like, this is the mystery of magic. Do you know? And it creates a temple of like mystery and discovery. And I imagine that the temple of the Witching Hour has the same, this color, like this beautiful turquoise color, banners hanging from everywhere, and it would be nighttime, undoubtedly, the Witching Hour, and then there would be twinkles of crystals and candlelight and heady aroma, and it's very much about discovery, and it's almost like an eroticism for the senses in terms of discovery. It's not a sexual thing, it's about a empowerment thing, and like, oh, this is what magic is. This is what it means to be magical, if that makes sense. Anyway, I have rambled on quite long enough for this one video. There are going to be more videos coming, so I hope you guys enjoyed this empowerment video and a quick look at some of the products, and many blessings.